The sickly sweet taste of poison still clung to my tongue as consciousness clawed its way back through the drugged haze. My eyes wouldn't open properly, weighted down by whatever my sister had slipped into my wedding wine. But I could feel everything, the silk sheets beneath my bare skin, nothing like the rough cotton of my own bed, the overwhelming scent of black roses and burnt amber, the presence of something ancient and terrifying breathing in the darkness beside me. My heart stopped. This wasn't the marriage bed I was supposed to wake in. Interesting, a voice like aged whiskey and smoke murmured from the shadows. You're not who I was expecting. Terror froze my blood as memories crashed back. My wedding day, or what should have been my wedding day, to Duke Aldrich, the match my parents had arranged to secure our family's failing fortunes. The toast my sister Celeste had offered with tears in her eyes, speaking of sisterly love and wishing me happiness. The strange bitter aftertaste in the ceremonial wine. The world tilting sideways as she caught me, whispering, I'm sorry, Leanna, but I deserve this more than you ever could. And now I was here, wherever here was, naked and vulnerable in a stranger's bed that reeked of dark magic. Please, I whispered, finally forcing my eyes open. The room was vast, lit only by purple flames dancing in an obsidian fireplace. Shadows writhed on the walls like living things. I'm not. You're not Lady Celeste Ravencrest, the man said, and I could finally make out his silhouette against the purple light, tall, lean, with eyes that glowed amber in the darkness. The woman who was supposed to be delivered to me tonight as part of an ancient blood debt your family owes mine. Blood debt? The words hit me like ice water. No, I gasped, pulling the sheets up to cover myself. No, there must be some mistake. I'm Leanna Ravencrest. I was supposed to marry Duke Aldrich tonight. My sister, The truth crashed over me with horrible clarity. She drugged me. She took my place at my wedding and sent me here to die in her place. The man stepped into the light, and I bit back a scream. He was beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful. Sharp, dangerous, mesmerizing. His dark hair fell past his shoulders, and arcane tattoos crawled up his bare chest like living serpents. This was no ordinary noble. This was Cassius Nightfall, the Warlock of the Northern Wastes, the Empire's most feared sorcerer, the man who had supposedly sold his soul for power beyond imagining. Your family, he said slowly, owes me a life. 100 years ago, your ancestor made a bargain for wealth and power. The price was one daughter from every third generation, given freely on her 20th birthday. His amber eyes studied me with unsettling intensity. Tonight is the new moon after Lady Celeste's 20th birthday. She was meant to fulfill that debt. I laughed, bitter and broken. Of course she was. And of course she knew. Everyone knew except me. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. She's taken everything from me my whole life. My parents' love, my accomplishments, my friends, and now my future. But sending me to die in her place? That's a new level of cruelty, even for her. Die? Cassius tilted his head, and something like amusement flickered across his face. Who said anything about dying? The stories. Everyone knows what you do to the women brought to you. The blood magic, the sacrifices. Mortals and their ridiculous stories. He waved a hand dismissively. I don't kill the women given to me. I bind them. Bind? To my service, yes. But more importantly, to my power. He moved closer, and the air grew thick with magic. 1 year of service in exchange for a portion of my abilities. The women who have served me have gone on to become the most powerful witches in the Empire. Queens, generals, leaders of covens that shape the fate of nations. His eyes narrowed. Your sister would have been magnificent with my power flowing through her veins. She has the ambition for it, clearly. My mind raced. Celeste hadn't just stolen my marriage and my future. She'd thrown away unimaginable power out of cowardice and greed. And she'd tried to sacrifice me to cover her tracks. But you're not her, Cassius continued. You're the unfavored daughter, aren't you? The one they kept in the shadows while your sister shone like a star. How did you... I can read it in your soul. The years of neglect leave marks. He sat on the edge of the bed, maintaining a respectful distance. The question is, what do we do about this situation? Your sister has violated the terms of the bargain by sending a substitute. I could demand her life as forfeit. I could curse your entire bloodline. Or, or, a slow smile spread across his face, and it was both terrible and beautiful. Or I could offer you a choice, Leanna Ravencrest. Serve me willingly for 1 year, and I will give you not just a portion of my power, but teach you to wield it. When you return to your world, you'll have the means to take everything your sister stole and more. Why would you do that? Because I despise oath breakers and cowards above all else. And because... He paused, studying me. You have something your sister lacks. You've survived years of being ground down, overlooked, dismissed, and you're still here, still fighting. That kind of strength combined with my power, you could reshape the Empire itself. I thought of Celeste, probably in Duke Aldrich's bed right now, laughing at how cleverly she'd disposed of me. I thought of my parents, who'd stood by and watched her torment me for 20 years, always taking her side, always believing her lies. I thought of every birthday they forgot, every achievement they ignored, every tear I'd cried alone in my room while they celebrated her. What exactly would this service entail? You would live here in my castle for 1 year. You would assist in my magical workings, manage my correspondence with the Empire, and learn the arts of sorcery. You would be treated with respect and dignity, given fine clothes and food, access to my entire library. And at the end of the year, you would return to your world with enough power to never be anyone's victim again. And if I refuse, then I send you home tonight with no memories of this place, to face whatever fate awaits the discarded daughter who was supposed to marry a duke but disappeared on her wedding night. He was offering me everything I'd ever wanted: power, respect, the chance for revenge. But more than that, he was offering me the chance to become someone new, someone who couldn't be pushed aside or forgotten. I need to know, I said quietly. The binding, will it hurt? Yes, he said simply. Power always comes with pain. But I suspect you're quite familiar with pain already. He was right. I'd been in pain my whole life. At least this pain would have a purpose. I'll do it, I said, meeting his amber eyes. I'll serve you for 1 year, and when I return, my sister will learn what happens when you throw someone away like garbage. Cassius smiled and purple fire danced in his eyes. Then let us begin. The binding ritual took place in the castle's highest tower, in a room where the walls were covered with astronomical charts and arcane symbols that seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. Cassius had given me a robe of deep purple silk to wear, and my bare feet stood on a circle of pure silver inlaid into the obsidian floor. The process is simple in concept, complex in execution, he explained, moving around the circle with practiced grace, lighting candles of black wax with purple flames. I will open a channel between us, allowing my power to flow into you. Your body will initially resist. Mortal forms aren't meant to contain this kind of energy. But if your will is strong enough, you'll adapt. And if my will isn't strong enough, then the binding fails and you'll be sent home unchanged. He paused in his preparations. But I don't think that will be a problem. You've been fighting your whole life, haven't you? Against indifference, against cruelty, against being erased. This is just another fight. He was right. When Celeste had convinced our parents I'd stolen her necklace when we were children, resulting in a beating that left me unable to sit for a week, I'd fought through the pain. When she'd spread rumors at every social gathering that I was simple-minded and unstable, destroying any chance I had at friendship, I'd fought through the isolation. When she'd sabotaged my scholarship to the Imperial Academy by burning my portfolio the night before submission, I'd fought through the despair. I'm ready, I said. The ritual began with words in a language that predated the Empire, each syllable hanging in the air like drops of liquid starlight. Cassius moved in a circle around me, his voice rising and falling in hypnotic cadences. The candles flared higher with each pass he made, until the room was ablaze with purple light. Then he stepped into the circle with me and everything changed. Give me your hands, he commanded, and I obeyed without hesitation. The moment our skin touched, electricity shot through my entire body. Not painful, not yet, just overwhelming, like standing in a thunderstorm. "Look at me," he said, and I met his amber eyes. This close, I could see they weren't truly amber at all, but filled with swirling galaxies of gold and bronze and copper, infinite and ancient. "This will hurt. Don't fight the pain. Let it transform you." He spoke a final word, one that seemed to bypass my ears entirely and resonate directly in my bones. And then the channel opened. Power flooded into me like molten metal, and I screamed. It felt like dying and being born at the same time, like every cell in my body was being unmade and reforged. I could feel my mundane human limitations breaking apart, making room for something vast and terrible and magnificent. Through the agony, I heard Cassius speaking, his voice the only anchor in a world of pain. "Your sister thought she was sending you to die. She thought she was discarding you like a broken toy. But pain is the greatest teacher, Leanna. It shows us what we're truly made of. And you're made of steel and starlight and spite. Let the power in. Let it make you into what you were always meant to be." I thought of every humiliation, every cruelty, every moment of being overlooked and undervalued. I thought of Celeste's smug smile as she handed me that poisoned wine. I thought of waking up in my supposed husband's arms, calling out my sister's name instead of mine because, of course, even on my wedding night, I would be invisible. The pain reached a crescendo that should have killed me, and then it shattered. The agony transformed into something else entirely. Power, pure and intoxicating, flowing through channels I hadn't known existed. I could feel the magic settling into my bones, my blood, my very soul. When I opened my eyes, when had I closed them? The world looked different. I could see the threads of magic that held reality together, shimmering like spider silk in moonlight. "Well," Cassius said, releasing my hands and stepping back. There was something like pride in his expression. "That was remarkably well done. Most people pass out at least twice during their first binding." I looked down at my hands. Purple light danced beneath my skin, following the lines of my veins like captured lightning. I can feel it. The power. It's overwhelming, intoxicating, terrifying. "Mine," I said firmly. "It's mine." He laughed, a sound like distant thunder. "Yes, it is. No one can take it from you now. Not your sister, not your parents, not even me. The binding gives you access to my power, but what you do with it is entirely your choice." The next months passed in a blur of learning and transformation. Cassius was a demanding teacher, but a fair one, pushing me to my limits, but never beyond what I could handle. He taught me to read the ancient languages of magic, to brew potions that could heal or harm, to command the elements and speak to the spirits that dwelt between worlds. The castle itself became my playground and prison both. It was vast beyond comprehension, with rooms that shifted location depending on the day. A library that contained every book ever written, and some that hadn't been yet, gardens where time moved differently and flowers bloomed in impossible colors. There were other servants, too, not all human, some bound by bargains like mine, others here by choice, drawn to the power and knowledge Cassius offered. "Why do you do this?" I asked him once, as we worked together in his laboratory, distilling moonlight into silver essence for a particularly complex spell. "The bargains, the teaching. You could rule the empire with your power, but you stay here in the wastes." "I did rule once," he said, not looking up from the delicate work. "For 300 years, I held the northern throne. Do you know what I learned? Power over others is ultimately hollow. Power over yourself, power to shape reality to your will, power to create and destroy as you see fit. That's what matters. But you take these women, bind them. I take those who are offered to me," he corrected, "and I give them something in return. Every witch who has served me has gone on to change the world. Queen Morrigan the Terrible? She spent a year in this castle. General Katara Stormcaller? She learned to command lightning in my gardens. Even St. Lucia the Healer gained her abilities through our binding, though the church prefers to forget that detail. And what do you gain from it?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Purpose, perhaps. Or penance. I've done terrible things in my long life, Leanna. Teaching others to seize their own power, to never be victims again. Perhaps it balances the scales a little." As the months passed, I grew stronger, not just in magic, but in confidence, in presence, in understanding of my own worth. The girl who had entered this castle, meek, overlooked, accepting of scraps, died a little more each day. In her place grew someone harder, sharper, more dangerous. I learned to transmute matter, turning lead into gold and water into wine. I learned to walk through dreams and speak to the dead. I learned to read the future in scattered bones and command storms with a whisper. But more importantly, I learned to value myself, to take up space, to demand respect rather than beg for it. Cassius watched my transformation with what I came to recognize as satisfaction. "You're exceeding every expectation," he told me one night, as I successfully summoned and bound a minor demon without his assistance. "Your sister would have been powerful with my gifts, yes, but you have a hunger she lacks, a need to prove yourself that drives you to heights she could never reach." "She always had everything handed to her," I said, dismissing the demon with a wave of my hand. "I had to fight for scraps. I suppose that made me stronger." "Strength forged in neglect and abuse is still strength," he agreed. "And soon, you'll have the chance to show them all exactly how strong you've become." 6 months into my service, I made a discovery that changed everything. I was in the library, researching binding spells for my own purposes, when I found a genealogy of the noble houses of the Empire. Curious about my own family's history, I traced back the Ravencrest line. What I found made my blood run cold. The bargain with Cassius, it was all there in the record. But there was more. A note in the margin, written in my grandmother's hand. "Celeste must never know. The debt will die with Lyanna." They had always known. My parents had always known that I was meant to be given to Cassius. They'd raised Celeste as their treasure and me as their sacrifice. Every moment of favoritism, every dismissal, every cruelty, it had all been deliberate. They couldn't bear to lose their favorite daughter. So they decided from my birth that I would be the one to pay the price. But Celeste had found out somehow. And rather than accept that, for once, I would have something she didn't. Even if that something was what they all assumed would be death, she'd taken matters into her own hands. "You knew," I said to Cassius that night over dinner. "You knew what my family had planned." "I suspected," he admitted. "The unfavored daughter kept ignorant of the bargain? It's happened before. Usually, the families at least have the decency to prepare their sacrifice, to let her know her fate. Your parents' cruelty in keeping you ignorant is notable. They meant to send me here completely unprepared, terrified, thinking I was being murdered." My hands shook with rage. And Celeste, when she found out, she didn't warn me. She didn't try to save me. She just took my escape route and threw me to the wolves anyway. "Are you a wolf, Lyanna?" Cassius asked mildly. I met his amber eyes. "No, I'm something much worse now. The last 6 months of my service, I dedicated myself to planning my revenge. Not just on Celeste, but on my entire family. They had conspired to destroy me from birth. They deserved to have their world torn apart in return. I used the castle's scrying pools to watch them, to learn their weaknesses and fears. My parents were drowning in debt. Duke Aldrich's fortune had turned out to be far less than advertised, and Celeste's expensive tastes were draining what little remained. My father had been embezzling from the imperial treasury to maintain their lifestyle. My mother had been having an affair with the stableman for years, meeting him in secret while pretending to visit the temple. And Celeste? My dear sister was miserable in her stolen marriage. Duke Aldrich was old, cruel, and increasingly suspicious of his young wife. He'd noticed inconsistencies in her stories, moments where she didn't know things Lyanna should have known. He'd started asking questions about their courtship that she couldn't answer because she'd never been there for it. "He knows something's wrong," I told Cassius, watching her cry in her gilded prison of a bedroom. "He doesn't know what, but he knows she's not who she claims to be." "And what will you do with that knowledge?" "I'm going to give him the answers he's looking for," I said, "and so much more." The year ended on the winter solstice, exactly 365 days after I'd woken in Cassius's bed. I stood in the same circle where I'd been bound, now preparing for my release. But I was not the same frightened girl who'd entered this room. I was something else entirely now, a force of nature, a reckoning in human form. The binding will remain, Cassius explained, though I knew the details by heart now. My power is yours forever, but our formal connection ends today. You're free to return to your world. Any advice? I asked. Don't hold back, he said simply. They showed you no mercy. Return the favor. He opened a portal with a gesture, revealing the front gates of my family's manor. Until we meet again, Lyanna Ravencrest. Thank you, I said, meaning it with every fiber of my being. For everything. Thank me by burning their world to the ground, he replied with a sharp smile. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Actual arson would be gauche. I laughed and stepped through the portal. The manor looked exactly the same, as if the year I'd been gone was just a blink. But I could see so much more now. The rot in the foundations, the wards that had been neglected, the very stones crying out with the weight of secrets and sins. I walked up to the front door and knocked. A servant answered, Mary, who'd been kind to me once before Celeste convinced her I'd stolen from her. Her face went white as snow. Lady Lyanna, but we thought you were dead, I supplied helpfully. No, Mary, though not for lack of trying on my family's part. Is the Duke in residence? The Duke? She seemed confused. Duke Aldrich? He's at his estate with your sister, miss. Perfect. And my parents? In the drawing room, miss. Should I announce? No need, I said, pushing past her gently. I'll announce myself. The drawing room doors burst open at my gesture, slamming against the walls with enough force to crack the wood. My parents leaped to their feet, their faces cycling through shock, confusion, and then terror as they took in my appearance. I'd deliberately chosen my entrance outfit, a gown of midnight purple that seemed to drink in light, my hair crowned with a circlet of black stars that Cassius had given me as a parting gift. Power rolled off me in visible waves. Hello, mother, father. I smiled, and I knew it wasn't a pleasant expression. Did you miss me? Lyanna, my mother whispered, you're alive. How are you? Alive? Yes, no thanks to you. I strolled into the room, magic crackling around my fingers. Though I suppose I should thank you, really. If you hadn't conspired to sacrifice me to pay your family's debt, I never would have gained this power. We never meant, my father stammered. Don't lie to me. The windows shattered at my shout and they cowered. I found grandmother's notes. You knew from my birth that I was meant for Cassius. You raised me to be thrown away. Every moment of coldness, every time you chose Celeste over me, it was all because you'd already decided I was expendable. It was for the family, my mother said weakly. The debt had to be paid. Then you should have sent Celeste, I snarled. She was the one actually specified in the bargain. But no, you couldn't bear to lose your golden child. So you kept me in the dark, made me feel worthless my whole life, just so you could throw me to what you thought was my death without any guilt. Celeste said she would handle it, my father said desperately. She said she had a plan. Oh yes, her plan. Drug me, steal my wedding, and send me to die in her place. I laughed and frost spread across the walls. Except there was one thing none of you bothered to research. Cassius doesn't kill the women given to him. He empowers them. Understanding dawned in their eyes, followed swiftly by horror. That's right, I continued. Your discarded daughter, your sacrificial lamb, your throwaway child. I now wield power beyond your comprehension, and I'm here to collect what's owed to me. What do you want? My father asked. Money? The estate? We'll give you anything. Everything, I said simply. I want everything. But first, I want you to understand the full scope of your failures. I waved my hand, and images appeared in the air. My father's embezzlement records, every stolen coin accounted for. My mother's affair, documented in excruciating detail. You've been stealing from the Empire for years, father. The penalty for that is death. And mother, adultery among the nobility? That's grounds for social exile at minimum. You wouldn't, my mother gasped. We're your parents. No, I said coldly. Parents love their children, all their children. You were just the people who housed me until you could throw me away. Please, Lyanna, my father dropped to his knees. Please, we'll do anything. You'll do exactly what I tell you, I agreed. First, you're going to sign over the entire estate to me. Every coin, every property, every title. Then you're going to write a full confession of your crimes, the embezzlement, the affair, and most importantly, the conspiracy to sacrifice your own daughter. You'll leave the empire before dawn and never return. That's exile. We'll be ruined. Yes, I said simply. You will be. Just as you tried to ruin me. They signed the papers with shaking hands. I watched them pack their meager belongings. I allowed them each one bag and the clothes on their backs. As they stood at the door, my mother turned back one last time. What about Celeste? She asked. What are you going to do to your sister? I smiled. Oh, I have something special planned for her. Duke Aldrich's estate was a monument to old money and older cruelty. I arrived at his gates at midnight, using magic to bypass his guards and wards. I found him in his study, poring over ledgers by candlelight. He looked up when I entered, his hand going to the sword at his side. Who, Lyanna? His eyes widened. But you're dead. Celeste said you died of fever before the wedding. My sister says many things, I replied, settling into the chair across from him, uninvited. Very few of them are true. Tell me, Your Grace, have you been happy in your marriage? His face darkened. What kind of question is that? An important one. You see, I know you've noticed inconsistencies, things your wife doesn't know that she should, stories that don't quite add up. Would you like to know why? You're speaking in riddles, girl. Then let me be clear. I leaned forward. The woman in your bed is not Lyanna Ravencrest. She never was. On our wedding day, yes, our wedding day, as I was the one you courted, my sister drugged me, took my place at the altar, and sent me away to what she believed was my death. That's impossible. I would have known. Would you? You courted me in gardens and ballrooms where she watched from the shadows. She knew every word we spoke, every gift you gave. She's an excellent actress, my sister. But there are things she couldn't fake. Tell me, does she remember the poem you wrote me? The one you slipped into my hand during the harvest ball? His face went pale. She said she lost it. She never had it. I pulled the worn piece of paper from my pocket, his handwriting still clear despite the year that had passed. I kept it with me even through my darkest moments. Even when I woke up in a stranger's bed, confused and terrified, betrayed by everyone I'd ever loved. My God, he breathed. It's true. I didn't marry. You married a fraud, a thief, a would-be murderess. I stood. And I'm here to help you rectify that situation. What do you want? I want justice. I want her exposed for what she is. I want the marriage annulled on grounds of fraud, which shouldn't be difficult given she's been living under my name. And I want her to know that her scheme failed in the most spectacular way possible. Duke Aldrich stood slowly. Despite his age, there was steel in his spine. I loved you, he said quietly. The real you. Your intelligence, your kindness. The way you laughed at my terrible jokes. She never laughed, not genuinely. I might have loved you too, I admitted. In another life. But that life was stolen from us both. Help me expose her, he said. Help me get justice for both of us. Oh, Your Grace, I smiled. I thought you'd never ask. We planned the reveal for the Duke's annual winter ball, the social event of the season. Everyone who mattered would be there, the entire court, all the noble families, even representatives from the imperial palace. It would be Celeste's moment of absolute triumph turned into her complete destruction. I spent the week before the ball spreading whispers. Anonymous letters arrived at various noble houses, hinting at a scandal in the Aldrich household. I ensured certain servants overheard discussions about unusual circumstances surrounding the Duke's marriage. By the night of the ball, the entire aristocracy was primed for drama. I arrived fashionably late, wearing a gown of liquid starlight that Cassius had taught me to weave from moonbeams and shadow. My entrance caused a hush to fall over the ballroom. Whispers erupted immediately. Wasn't that the younger Ravencrest girl, the one who'd disappeared? Died of fever, hadn't she? Celeste stood at the Duke's side on the grand staircase, wearing my mother's diamonds and a gown of crimson silk. The moment she saw me, every drop of blood drained from her face. The champagne glass in her hand shattered. Ladies and gentlemen, Duke Aldrich's voice boomed across the ballroom. I have an announcement to make. It has come to my attention that I have been the victim of a most heinous fraud. The crowd pressed closer, hungry for scandal. The woman standing beside me, he continued, is not my wife. She is not Lady Leanna Ravencrest as she has claimed to be for the past year. She is, in fact, Lady Celeste Ravencrest, who drugged her own sister on what should have been her wedding day, took her place at the altar, and attempted to murder the true Leanna by sending her to what she believed was certain death. Gasps and cries of shock rippled through the crowd. Celeste tried to run, but I raised a hand and she froze in place, held by invisible chains of power. "Lies!" she shrieked. "This is all lies! I am Leanna! That creature is an imposter!" "Really?" I asked, my voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. "Then you'll remember the lullaby our nurse sang to us as children. The one she only sang to me because you demanded a different song?" She went silent. "You'll remember the scar on my left shoulder from when you pushed me down the stairs on my 7th birthday?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. "You'll remember the name of my childhood doll, the one you burned when I was 10 because I wouldn't give you my dessert?" "This proves nothing," she screamed desperately. "She could have learned these things." "Then let's try something more definitive," I suggested. I pulled out a vial of silver liquid, a truth serum I'd brewed in Cassius's laboratory. "Drink this and tell everyone your real name. If you're truly Leanna, you have nothing to fear." "Never! You're trying to poison me!" "Like you poisoned me?" I asked sweetly. The crowd gasped again. "No, sister dear, I'm trying to give you a chance to prove your innocence. But we both know you can't, can you?" Duke Aldrich stepped away from her in disgust. "The marriage is annulled. Guards, arrest this woman for fraud, attempted murder, and theft of identity." As the guards moved forward, Celeste's mask finally cracked completely. "You were supposed to die," she screamed at me. "The Warlock was supposed to kill you. How are you here? How are you alive?" "Because Cassius Nightfall doesn't kill his tributes, you fool," I said, letting power flare around me so everyone could see what I'd become. "He empowers them. You sent me to receive the greatest gift our family could have been given, all because you couldn't bear the thought of me having something you didn't. It should have been mine. Everything should have been mine. I'm the eldest. I'm the beautiful one. I'm the one everyone loves." "And yet," I said softly, "you're the one in chains, and I'm the one with everything." The guards dragged her away, still screaming. The ballroom erupted in chaos, excited chatter, shocked exclamations, people pressing forward to get a better look at me. But I wasn't done. "Lords and ladies," I called out, and silence fell again. "Let me tell you a story about the Ravencrest family, a story of debt, betrayal, and attempted murder that goes back generations." I told them everything. The bargain with Cassius, my parents' decision to sacrifice me while keeping Celeste safe, their years of deliberate cruelty to ensure I would never be missed when they sent me to my supposed death. I showed them the proof, documents, letters, my grandmother's journal. By the time I finished, the Ravencrest name was destroyed beyond repair. "My parents have already fled the Empire," I concluded. "My sister will face trial for her crimes. And I stand before you as the last true Ravencrest, heir to what remains of our estate and bearer of power beyond mortal comprehension. I have returned not for your approval or acceptance, but to claim what was always mine by right." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, from the back of the room, someone started clapping. Slowly, others joined in, until the entire ballroom rang with applause. They weren't applauding me out of love or admiration. They were applauding the spectacle, the drama, the complete destruction of a noble house. The aristocracy loved nothing more than watching one of their own fall. Duke Aldrich approached me as the crowd began to disperse into excited groups, dissecting every detail of the scandal. "What will you do now?" he asked. "Now? I live, freely, fully, without anyone's permission or approval." I paused. "I'm sorry, for what she stole from both of us." "As am I. We might have been happy together." "Perhaps. But that was another life." I touched his hand gently. "Find someone who chooses you truly, Your Grace. You deserve that much." I left the ball as the clock struck midnight, walking out into the snow that had begun to fall. The cold didn't touch me anymore. Cassius's power kept me warm from within. Celeste's trial was swift and decisive. With the Duke's testimony, my evidence, and her own public confession at the ball, there was no question of her guilt. She was sentenced to life imprisonment in the Tower of Sorrows, a prison for those who committed crimes against nobility. I visited her once, a month after her sentencing. She looked terrible. Her hair, once golden and lustrous, hung limp and gray. Her skin was sallow, her eyes sunken. The tower had a way of draining the life from its prisoners. "Come to gloat?" she asked bitterly when she saw me. "No, I came to understand." I sat outside her cell, maintaining a safe distance. "Why, Celeste? You had everything. Our parents' love, social standing, beauty, suitors. Why wasn't it enough?" She laughed, harsh and broken. "Everything. I had nothing. Everything I had could be taken away in an instant. Beauty fades, love is conditional. Status depends on wealth. But power? Real power? That lasts forever. So you knew what Cassius offered. You knew, and you still sent me in your place." "I was afraid," she admitted. The first honest thing she'd said to me in years. The stories about him? I thought he was a monster who would torture and kill whoever was sent to him. I couldn't face that. But I also couldn't let you have it if I was wrong. The thought of you gaining power while I stayed ordinary, it was unbearable. So you chose the coward's path. You tried to have it all and lost everything. And you gained everything by losing it all first. She met my eyes. "Do you hate me?" I considered the question. "No, I pity you. You were so afraid of losing what you had that you never risked reaching for what you could have been. You'll spend the rest of your life in this cell, knowing that the power you were too frightened to claim is now mine forever. Will you ever forgive me?" "No." I stood to leave. "But I will thank you. Without your betrayal, I never would have discovered my own strength. Without your cruelty, I never would have met Cassius. Without your fear, I never would have become who I was meant to be." "Who are you meant to be?" I smiled. "Free. I rebuilt the Ravencrest estate from the ground up, using both magic and the wealth I'd inherited to transform it into something entirely new. Where once there had been a monument to old cruelties and older secrets, I created a sanctuary for those who had been discarded by their families as I had been. Young women arrived at my gates. Second daughters, bastards, those deemed too plain or too strange or too difficult. I taught them what Cassius had taught me, that power comes from within, that strength is forged in adversity, that they deserve to take up space in the world. Some stayed and learned magic under my tutelage. Others found their strength and returned to claim their places in society. All of them left stronger than they arrived. 5 years after my return, I received an unexpected visitor. The servants announced him simply as a lord from the north, but I knew who it was before he entered my study. The air itself grew heavy with power, shadows lengthened despite the afternoon sun, and frost traced patterns on the windows. "Cassius," I said, rising from my desk. "I wondered when you'd come." He looked exactly the same, ageless, beautiful, dangerous. But his smile when he saw me was warm and genuine. "I had to see what you'd done with my gifts," he said, looking around the study where young women practiced levitation and transmutation. "I must say I'm impressed. You've become quite the teacher yourself." "I learned from the best." "Flattery?" He raised an eyebrow. "That's new." "Not flattery, truth." I gestured for him to sit. "You saved me, not from death, from something worse. From a life of being nothing." "You were never nothing, Leanna. Your family simply convinced you otherwise." He accepted the wine I offered, a vintage I'd transmuted myself from water and moonlight. "I hear your sister still lives in the tower." "She does. Some say I should have killed her." "But that would have been merciful," he observed, "and mercy was never what she deserved." "No, she deserves to live with the knowledge of what she threw away out of fear." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching my students practice. One girl, barely 16, was struggling with a basic illumination spell. I could see her frustration building, the same anger I'd once carried at being unable to do what seemed to come so easily to others. "Patience, Morel," I called out. Power isn't about force, it's about understanding. Feel the light that already exists within you and invite it out. The girl closed her eyes, breathed deeply, and suddenly her hands erupted with brilliant silver light. She squealed with delight, and the other students cheered. "You're good with them," Cassius observed. "I know what it's like to feel powerless. I won't let anyone under my protection feel that way." "And what about you?" he asked. "What do you feel now?" I considered the question. 5 years ago, I'd been nobody. The forgotten daughter, the sacrificial lamb, the girl whose own sister tried to murder her rather than see her gain anything. Now I was Lady Lyanna Ravencrest, the witch of the Northern Marches, teacher and protector of the discarded. I had power, respect, purpose. "Complete," I said finally. "I feel complete." "Good." He stood to leave. "That's all I ever wanted for you. Will I see you again?" "Perhaps. The world has a way of bringing people back together when there's still work to be done." He paused at the door. "Oh, and Lyanna, your parents have been spotted in the southern kingdoms, living as common merchants. They seem diminished, as they should be. Your sister sends letters to anyone she thinks might help her. She claims you enchanted everyone, that you're the real villain of this story. Let her. No one believes her anyway." "No, they don't." He smiled. "The villain of the story rarely gets to teach young witches and transform an estate built on cruelty into a haven for the lost. Villains don't save people, Lyanna. Heroes do." "I'm no hero." "No," he agreed. "You're something better. You're a survivor who became a savior. There's more power in that than in all the heroic destinies ever written." After he left, I returned to my students. Morel was still glowing with pride at her success, the silver light dancing between her fingers like captured starlight. "Lady Lyanna," she asked shyly, "is it true what they say? That your own sister tried to kill you?" "It's true." "And you survived and became powerful enough to destroy her?" "That's also true." "How?" The girl's eyes were wide with a mixture of awe and hope. "How did you become so strong?" I thought of Cassius, of the year in his castle learning to command forces beyond mortal comprehension. I thought of my parents' betrayal, Celeste's cruelty, and the poisoned wine that had started it all. I thought of waking up in a stranger's bed, terrified and alone, only to discover that sometimes the monster in the tower is actually your salvation. I stopped believing what others told me about my worth, I said simply. I stopped accepting scraps when I deserved a feast. I stopped making myself small so others could feel big. And when someone tried to throw me away, I refused to disappear. "But they had all the power." "No," I interrupted gently. "They had position, privilege, the ability to hurt me. But power, real power, that comes from within. It comes from surviving what should have destroyed you and choosing to rise anyway. It comes from transforming your pain into purpose." I looked at all my students, these discarded daughters and forgotten sisters, these girls the world had tried to convince were worthless. "Every single one of you has that power," I told them. "Your families may have thrown you away, but that doesn't determine your worth. You determine your worth. You decide who you become. And I'm here to help you become magnificent." That night, I stood on the highest tower of my estate, looking out over the lands that were now mine. In the distance, I could see the lights of Duke Aldrich's castle. He'd remarried to a kind widow with 3 daughters who adored him. Beyond that, the Tower of Sorrows rose like a black needle against the stars. My sister imprisoned within, slowly withering away in her cell. Once, I would have been invisible against this landscape. A nobody. Nothing more than a shadow in my sister's light. Now I was a beacon of power, a refuge for the lost, a reminder that sometimes the discarded stone becomes the cornerstone of something extraordinary. A year to the day after Cassius left, I received a letter delivered by a raven with purple eyes. "My dear Lyanna, the southern kingdoms are experiencing an interesting situation. Several noble families have been systematically sacrificing their unwanted daughters to a creature they call the Devourer. The families prosper while the girls disappear. Sound familiar? I thought you might be interested in paying them a visit. After all, every discarded daughter deserves a champion, and you've become quite accomplished at destroying those who prey on the powerless. If you're interested, follow the raven. It will lead you to where you're needed, yours in darkness and light. See, I looked at the raven, which tilted its head and cawed softly. A new adventure. A new chance to save those who couldn't save themselves. A new opportunity to show the world what happened when you discarded daughters like trash. Tell him I'm coming, I said to the raven. It cawed again and took flight, heading south. I would follow at dawn after ensuring my students were cared for in my absence. That night, I visited the scrying pool one last time, looking in on my family. My parents were haggling with customers in their tiny shop, faces worn and bitter, all their glory stripped away. Celeste was curled in her cell, talking to herself, creating elaborate fantasies where she was the victor and I was the prisoner. They had tried to sacrifice me to save themselves. Instead, they had sacrificed themselves and saved me. The irony was not lost on me. As dawn broke, I mounted my horse, a magnificent black stallion I'd bought with the gold I'd transmuted, and rode south, following the path the raven had taken. Behind me, my students waved from the windows. These girls I'd saved as Cassius had saved me. 10,000 words could not capture the full scope of transformation that year had brought. From the drugged girl waking in a warlock's bed to the witch riding off to save other discarded daughters, it was a journey measured not in miles but in metamorphosis. Celeste had thought she was sending me to my death. Instead, she had sent me to my destiny. She had thought she was stealing my future. Instead, she had freed me from a future that would have been far too small for what I was meant to become. I was no longer Leanna Ravencrest, forgotten second daughter. I was Leanna Ravencrest, Witch of the Northern Marches, student of Cassius Nightfall, savior of the discarded. And my story? It was just beginning.